What's going on, everybody? This is your boy Will Cotchery once again with another episode of the Sports Binge. Thank you guys in advance for tuning in. I'm really excited you guys here to hear what I have to say regarding the news about David Griffin. And it's really been quite the eventful week for the NBA, as we could all see on Twitter. With the retirements and the going away parties of Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade, two NBA legends. Dwayne Wade being the third greatest shooting guard of all time, and of course Dirk being the greatest European player to ever play in the game. So it's been quite the eventful week, and especially today as it pertains to the Los Angeles Lakers, as we saw that a couple days ago, Magic Johnson relinquished his duties as president of basketball operations for the franchise on a very surprising notice, and only to be followed up by what transpired today as with Luke Walton being mutually deciding to part ways with the franchise as the head coach, which quite frankly wasn't a big surprise, but nonetheless it's happened. Now GM Ron Pelinka is still in the fold for Lakers at the current moment, but as far as president of basketball ops, I've been here. Colin Cowherd threw out the name of Kobe Bryant, which if you saw the video, it really definitely makes sense for all the reasons that he pointed out. If you haven't checked that out, check on the Herd Twitter page. But as it pertains to David Griffin, he made, news was reported today that he reached an agreement in principle with New Orleans Pelicans to become, I think he's president of basketball operations also. Now, obviously, of course, if you really look down at it, it's really a win-win from everybody, even for the Lakers. I think Danny Ferry, who's I think was working with the Pelicans on an interim basis, he really did the whole league a solid, those two franchises at least, by just foregoing the position just for the sake of his family, not to reroute them from their Atlanta-based home. So which opened the door further for David Griffin to step in and take that open position for the Pelicans. So a lot of people are saying, what that means for LeBron and company, that it make it unlike Dell Demps, who really played petty with the whole situation from the trade deadline onward. It should make trading Anthony Davis to the Lakers much more easier for the Pelicans. For the Lakers' sake, that should be good news for them, because quite frankly, I just don't see it. I'll be very surprised to see Anthony Davis in New Orleans Pelicans uniform past this summer. I understand he's an unrestricted free agent in 2020, but I just don't see him lasting even that long in the Pelicans uniform. And what's crazy is that, to think about it, David Griffin kind of gave us a lead on what he would do if he was in the Pelicans' shoes regarding their assets with Anthony Davis, because obviously that's the big elephant in the room.
If I was holding their cards, I would probably want to be in a situation where I got at least one young player that projected potentially to be a star, draft picks, an elite role player, somebody that could really further the cause for us as a winner, because when you're bringing more young kids to the fore, you need those guys to galvanize a group.
Yeah, a little foreshadow much. So, I mean, he already, even though he was away for, now it's been 2 full years away from the game from holding that type of position, he already had his wheels turning, about the whole situation regarding both franchises. So, that's what anybody who wants to stay closely knit to whatever craft in life they're affiliated with. But now, for those of you guys who don't have any clue about who David Griffin is, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of his NBA career. So, he spent 17 seasons with the Phoenix Suns while he was beginning as an intern in 1993, while he was a student at Arizona State University, and he spent basically 93 to 2010. So, in September 2010, he was named vice president of basketball operations for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he didn't become the full-time GM until 2014. And obviously his most noteworthy acquisition right after was trading for Kevin Love, who was the star forward for obviously the Minnesota Timberwolves. In order to acquire him, he gave up Andrew Wiggins, who was the former number 1 pick in that 2014 year, and he also gave up Anthony Bennett, who was also the former number 1 pick. And this was accumulated from of course, the other many trades that he had and the other acquisitions that he put forth. And he finished, in result of that, he finished second place in NBA Executive of the Year for the 2014-2015 season when the Cavs made it to the finals. But unfortunately for them, they lost to the Golden State Warriors, which ended up being their first of 3 championships in a 4-year span. And they, even though the next season they end up winning the championship in, of course, the historic comeback fashion against the 73-9 Warriors, they end up losing again in the finals in 2017. And that's when they did not renew his contract for whatever reason. But of course, I can't be surprised because it's the franchise is owned by Dan Gilbert, and full disclosure, you don't prosper under Dan Gilbert. I've said this before. I'll say it yet another time. I've said that Dan Gilbert is one of the 3 worst owners in the history of professional American sports. It is bar none. And for him to call out LeBron is, first of all, call out his manhood, challenge his manhood, impugn his manhood. It challenged his character when he left Cleveland the first time. I think I was classless and tasteless. But that's another story for another day. I actually put a link to it in the description box below, so you guys could watch that in your own leisure time. But as to why I think Dan Gilbert is that low of a human being, quite honestly, especially as it pertains to owning the business. But anyway, yes, you don't prosper under Dan Gilbert in anything. So yeah, basically, like I said, just to recap, first 17 years in the league, Phoenix Suns, joined the Cavaliers franchise in 2010, became the full-time general manager in 2014. Second place, runner-up for the NBA Executive of the Year award in 2015. Won the title in 2016, and I forgot to mention this. They set the Cavaliers set offensive records in the 2017 playoffs by setting a playoff scoring efficiency record by scoring 120 points per 100 possessions. So you could see, just in a short, really essentially in a 5-year stretch, what this man has been able to accomplish. Yes, I know he had LeBron. Yes, I know he had Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love. I understand that, but for him to put that team around those guys was really, instrumental in Cleveland hoisting the city's first championship in 50 plus years. I can't remember the exact number, but he should be applauded for what he's done. I said all that to say this. This hiring by the Pelicans, by them hiring David Griffin, will be more about David Griffin than about the Pelicans. And I'll explain why. This is not going to take me long. The whole point of the video is not going to take me long at all to explain. Yes, the Pelicans, by hiring them, it does prove that they are serious about their future. I will admit that. And yes, it does the Lakers a solid because you could probably have a free pathway to get Anthony Davis for the Lakers and for whatever package that is comfortable for both sides. But I say that this will be huge for David Griffin is because I feel like deep down he wants to prove that he can turn around a franchise. Yet, even though he won the championship in Cleveland, I feel like he wants to prove to the world that it wasn't just LeBron's doing. And and I said this in the past, a few years back when I was doing a Twitter thread regarding Kyrie Irving, him being underappreciated. And I think I did post 2018, 2017, I don't remember exactly, but I was saying Kyrie Irving was just one of the latest stars to really suffer from what I call the quote unquote Robin syndrome, just having those star players who don't get their just due as a member of a duo or trio. Now I understand, the stars are the stars, and the main guy, and I understand everybody has to play their role, but it goes back to the Shaq and Kobe thing. Kobe didn't really get his fair due as far as how much he really meant to that dynasty run. Same thing was with Chris Bosh, even though of course he was the third guy. What he did for Dwayne Wade and LeBron James is opening pathways for those guys just to go to the slash to the hole, because that's when they're historically at their best. So Chris Bosh had to step out just to space the floor for those guys. And really you see this Rodman syndrome a lot with LeBron teams, like I said, with Chris Bosh and really Eric Spoelstra, even though he wasn't a player, of course, he was their head coach. Very underappreciated coach because they were always one of the top defensive teams in that era with the big three. and of course with David Blatt even for a short period of time, Ty Lue of course, and David Griffin, even though he put a lot of those pieces together for that championship run. You know, obviously everybody, you see all the Twitter, you know, on Twitter, online, social media, and the pundits nationally say, well, you know, LeBron's the coach, he's a GM, all yada yada yada. And I think, and actually David Griffin responded to those things on the Starter Show, and he really what his thoughts were.
There's a perception outside of the franchise that no matter whoever has the title of Cavs GM, the real GM there is LeBron. Is that true? And if not, why does that perception exist in the NBA world?
Well, no, I mean, it's not true at all.
So you weren't always having to run things by LeBron, because that's what people think.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to have that role. He doesn't really want to do those things. You know, he is obsessed with winning basketball games. What he wanted to do was lead the guys in the locker room and be as good as he can possibly be. He spends more time on his body and getting himself mentally and physically right than any player I've ever seen. So he didn't want the burden of any of those things. The reason people perceive that is because he was on one-year deals, because he is the best player of his generation, and the natural assumption is they won't do anything to upset him.
Right.
So if they do that, he must want that. And the reality is there were several things we did because it was the right thing to do. And certainly I would go to him and say, listen, this is why we're going to do that. Just as I did with Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, we were raising a family. And so we were definitely involving everybody in what that family was going to look like. But Bron never made any demands like that. There was never a time where LeBron said, I want X, Y, Z. And if we did ever have conversations from a basketball perspective, the guy's a savant. So you want his input.
Right.
You wouldn't be doing your job if you weren't listening to the guy. So we talked a lot, and we talked to a lot of our players. But I think it's really unfair that he gets that reputation, particularly as it pertains to the front office component of it. You'll see him within a course of a game doing some real heavy lifting from a coaching perspective. Yeah. And Steve Nash would often do the exact same thing in Phoenix, where he's really sort of putting everything in a way that the players can understand it and digest it. But he wasn't trying to be the coach either. So I just think he gets a bum rap because of the fact that he was on one-year deals, and because it's a natural assumption that you're going to do what the guy wants to do because you want him to come back.
Yeah, so for him to have to go on a national platform and to really explain that to the national media, I feel like it's unfortunate for a guy who really has worked on his craft, paid his dues in the league for essentially at this point almost basically two decades. You know, it's really, really unfortunate that he had to do that. Now, I understand, you know, he was saying that LeBron gets a bad rap for having that GM and saying he doesn't want the responsibilities. But I think deep down, he knows that he should get more just due. So I feel like this is a tremendous opportunity for his career, obviously, because he does have that great bargaining chip in Anthony Davis. So most like I said earlier, I think he's going to be traded away from New Orleans. I feel like that's just a foregone conclusion at this point. And also, just most importantly for his legacy as a GM or as a front office guy in general, I feel like he wants to prove to the world that I can't do this without LeBron James. And I say all power to him and good luck to him in his future. And I feel like if he can turn this around, I feel like his name will be changed. His perception of him will be changed forever. So that's all. This is all my 2 cents on the whole hiring. So I just want to share that with you guys. I want to see what you guys think. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Just tell me if I'm off base. Tell me if I'm being extra. Just tell me whatever. Just be honest with me. Be cutthroat, straight to the point. I appreciate you guys in advance. You guys have a blessed night. And take